Well, hello everybody. I am going to attempt to make a report on our Montana trip for June. We made a trip down to over across Montana on I-90 all the way over to Garryowen, which is where Little Bighorn, or the Indians called it the Valley of the Greasy Grass. The river they called Greasy Grass, not Little Bighorn they called it. And the Indian encampment area they called Greasy Grass, right next to an area where they called Medicine Tail. And so Medicine Tail Coulee. And the Indians that owned that piece of property where the Greasy Grass or Little Bighorn village was, they say that at least the Reelbird family that lived there and owned that property say that actually Custer did not die at the last stand up on the hill. He did not make a last stand. They believe that Custer was one of the very first people killed, and that his body was not mutilated because the Indians felt like he died as a coward and died without being a warrior, and therefore they didn't want to, vex their spirit by touching or mutilating the body of someone who hadn't been a brave soldier. Got to find my notes here real quick. So I did a little overview. I wrote myself an outline of some talking points and things that I can use to make this report video. And so first of all, the dates of the trip. This June trip was June 18th through 23rd. And the actual Battle of Little Bighorn was fought on June 25th. That's today, June 25th, 1876. And so, next year is going to be a significant one for the Indians that are getting ready to do that, to do the reenactment for next year. The round trip from here in Republic all the way to Little Bighorn, Garryowen, Montana, and then back was 1,637 miles total that we drove. I did meet up with my oldest son, Bohannon, and his wife, Kimberly. They had arranged for this for my birthday gift. Actually, my birthday was the 8th of June. Kimberly's was the 23rd. And so we worked it out so that we'd kind of do it as a dual birthday thing. And my oldest son, Bohannon, and Kimberly, they are now empty nesters, like they like to say. They're empty nesters. Both of their boys have gone out on their own now. And hello, everybody. I'm going to spend more time talking than actually responding because I actually can't see the screen very well, and because I want to stay with my notes a little bit, but I'll get you through this program, this trip to Montana and how all of that went. The whole trip, 1,637 miles total. I met up with Bohannon and Kimberly. Bohannon, he and his wife are now empty nesters, what they say. Both of their kids are out on their own. The oldest son lives in Mount Vernon, and their youngest son just took a job in Colorado as a cowboy. Can you imagine? And so, he's doing the cowboy thing. And so my boy and his wife, Bohannon and his wife, got a camper, and they're behind their camper. They're pulling a Jeep, and they're taking 6 months to just travel. He can work remotely. His job, they own a plumbing business, but they've got management running the plumbing business, and so they do business consulting. And so it just means that they're traveling all the time. And, Maggie Burkhart, I don't even know what it means to join your live. So this is kind of a new thing for me. Anyway, so they're just traveling full time. They've got a Starlink and a solar panel system. And so they can, and using iPads and so forth, they can be anywhere up in the woods. They like to primitive camp, and so they'll be up anywhere in the mountains, in the woods, and they can still do their business consulting work from those areas. And so Bohannon was the one who recommended that we do this for a birthday gift, and they ended up paying they wanted to. They paid for the entire trip, except for the gas that it took me to get there, and the gas that it took me to get halfway home. They paid even for the gas that I used while we were there. I took my RPod camp trailer, and I did buy this Last year I bought an R-Pod camper, and I did that on purpose. It's a really light one. When it's dry weight is like 2,500 pounds. I drive a GMC Terrain, which is a very small car. When I'm not pulling anything, it gets 30 miles to the gallon. So I wanted something that would get good gas mileage, but I needed something that was powerful enough to pull a camper. My wife and I had some kind of standards we were looking for. It needed to be light enough that my Terrain could pull it, which its maximum is 3,500. I needed something that was light enough for my Terrain to pull. It needed to have a full bed, not one like that you make up every night out of the table or so forth, but a bed that was there, a full-size bed that was there all the time. It needed an indoor kitchen, and it needed a bathroom, indoor bathroom. And so this R-Pod, 2015 R-Pod 178 meets all of those requirements for us. It was used 2015, so I bought it for what I considered to be a good price, and that's what we've got to use. And I'm just going to tell you, it performed flawlessly. I was a little bit concerned. That's a long trip, 700 some miles over, 700 and some miles back, and we were crossing 4 mountain passes to get there. There was 4th of July Pass is 3,173 feet. Lookout Pass is 4,700 feet. Homestake Pass, which is the Great Divide, was 6,385 feet. Bozeman Pass was 5,800 feet, and then there's all kinds of smaller passes along the way too. And so, that's a pretty major thing. All of that drive, and then all of those passes too. And so, while I've taken the R-Pod on some smaller trips, about 300 miles to my mom's and so forth, this was a significant thing. And then we were gone for 5 days total, and so we're going to be sleeping on it a little bit longer than we've done so far. And so I was a little bit apprehensive about how it was all going to work, but I'm just going to tell you, they performed flawlessly. My car had more than enough power up over the mountains and the passes and so forth. In most of Montana on I-90, the speed limit is 80 miles an hour. Well, I don't feel comfortable driving that fast. I don't feel comfortable driving that fast without the trailer, and I wasn't about to do it with the trailer. But I did drive about 71 miles an hour on most of the freeway. Coming up the passes, a lot of the times was more like 65 or 60. But because they had slowed down up in the passes area where there's corners and curves and stuff, they had limited the speed limit a little bit up there, and so I did slow down in some of those areas. But I could have easily, up any one of the passes we took, I could have easily done the 71 miles an hour without any trouble. The one thing that is different pulling that R-Pod, and I've known this the whole time, and you got to know some of this, but it gets 30 miles to the gallon. The Terrain gets 30 miles a gallon by itself, but when you're pulling that R-Pod, it averages about 12 miles to the gallon, and going over those passes, I was getting more like 9.5 miles to the gallon. I did choose to use 89 octane, the medium grade, or octane plus, rather than the lowest price gas, just to give the car a little bit more oomph, give it a chance, that kind of thing. So I gave it that 89. I averaged it was about $3.51 a gallon throughout Idaho and Montana. Here in Washington, of course, it's a lot more expensive than that. Our government is taxing gas. We have the highest taxes on gas of any place in the country, I think it is. And so our gas was higher than anywhere else that I went to. But outside of the state of Washington, we averaged about $3.51 a gallon for that 89 octane fuel. We left Republic at 10:30 in the morning on the 18th, Wednesday the 18th, and our goal was to make it to Missoula, Montana. I had made arrangements with a church there in Missoula, Lighthouse Baptist Church. I talked to their pastor, Tom Lamons, and he had given me permission. I told him we wanted to go to church on Wednesday night anyway. We wanted to do a midweek service, and we thought we could make it to Missoula in time. And so I'd called, and we asked if we could just park our camper and spend the night in their parking lot. Well, Pastor Lamons was actually going to be out of town. He was at teen camp during the week. So he had made arrangements with his assistant pastor, his name is Brad Oler, to meet up with us. And so Brother Oler called me on Wednesday morning before we left, and we talked, we made some arrangements. I wasn't really sure how long it was going to take for us to get there. And so he just said, when you know, because he had things going on too. And so when you know when you're going to get in town, keep in touch. And he actually did call me a couple of times through the day to kind of just see where I was at and how things were going. And so we got to Lighthouse Baptist Church in Missoula about 6:30. Services start at 7. We got there at about 6:30. And beautiful building. As we're driving through, he'd given me directions to where the church was. I'm following directions, and so there's a place. I turn a corner, and when we turn the corner, I've got a mile to get to the church, and it's straight up a hill. I told my wife, I said, so you watch, that church could be sitting up on a hill. City set on a hill cannot be hid, and so churches like being up on hills like that. So sure enough, it was on the very crest of the top of that hill is where Lighthouse Baptist Church sits. It's got a beautiful view of Lolo Peak and that area, the valley down there in the Lolo Pass area, and just a beautiful area to see the services, to park our camper for the night. We stayed in the church parking lot that evening. They had a hookup where we could get power. We had to, and we could get water, so we got water filled up. With the RPod, that's one of the things they recommend, that you do not pull it with water, the weight hard on the frame. To make it that light, it's got a lightweight frame, and so they recommend that you do not pull it, that you do not with the water tank full. And so I try to run with about a third of a tank, which is 10 gallons. And I tried it so that I've got a little bit of water in case I need it for emergencies on the way to and from places, but not full. So when we got there, we filled it up. We were able to take showers, and they had power, so we were able to hook up to power. We hooked up to 110, but we could have done the 30 amp if we wanted to. We could have done that as well. We hooked up to 20 amp instead. They were just incredibly gracious. As soon as we pulled up, Pastor Oler came out, greeted us, and they're getting ready for services in just a few minutes, and so we got things set up, and he went back inside to get ready for church. We got things set up, cleaned up, or changed our clothes so that we could go to services that evening. And the hospitality was great. They left the back door unlocked for us so that we could use the bathroom and the kitchen in the church if we wanted to do that. We didn't need to because we had all of that in our RPod, but we could have done that. They surprised us after the service with a love offering, which was unexpected and certainly undeserved. All we did was go to church. And he said, no, Pastor wants to be an encouragement to preachers who are driving through. I will be honest, I will hesitate going back there to ask if I can just go to services and leave and camp there overnight. I'll hesitate again because I don't want to expect offerings from love gifts from them. But they gave me a love offering, and then more than that is the next morning we left it at about 8:30. But Pastor Oler met us, and he filled our car up, topped it off, so that we had a full tank of gas to take off for the day, which is a thing, because since now I think I said this, the terrain gets 30 miles a gallon when I don't pull the trailer. It gets 12 to over the passes. It was only getting 9 miles to the gallon, so that meant I had to get gas about every 150 miles. I can go about 400 miles on a full tank of gas when I'm not pulling the trailer, but the gas tank on that car is not made for pulling something like that. And so they've designed it so that you can get that 400 miles without a trailer. You put that trailer on there, the gas mileage goes down a lot, and so that means that I was stopping at about every 150 miles. I wanted to fill up with gas. I was talking to my son Bohannon about that. He said, "Boy, well, you wouldn't want to go to Canada, because sometimes it's 400 miles between gas stations." Well, if you think about that, if I was to take, got 20 gallons of gas inside the full tank, if I was to take 10 gallons, 2 5-gallon external cans and put them up on top of the car rack, which I could do. I wouldn't want to take more than 10, but put them up there, but I could do 2 pretty easily. But that would still only get me 300 miles or 250, something like that. And so I still wouldn't be able to go to many places in Canada with that RPod. It would be challenging to be able to get enough gas to keep the car full to make those sorts of trips. So got up on Thursday morning, left at 8:30, and drove to Garryowen, which we stayed at. My son had made reservations at a place called Seventh Ranch, and Seventh is for the Seventh Cavalry. So it's a seventh inside of a horseshoe, and I understand the horseshoe had to do with that was the brand of the Seventh Cavalry, and Custer's Day was seventh inside of a horseshoe. So that was the Seventh Ranch campground, and it's an actual working cattle ranch, and they have many cattle and things, but they have a beautiful, beautiful campground there as well. And we got there at about right around 4 o'clock. And so lots of stops on the way for gas and so forth. But we got there right around 4 o'clock. We got things set up that evening, and just got to enjoy a good evening with my son and his wife. They cooked steaks. They had prepared for us. They knew we were coming. And we actually went to a grocery store in Hardin, which is about 14 miles away, and picked up a couple of the perishable things, and picked up a couple of those things to have with us, so that we had steaks and salad. Beautiful dinner, wonderful dinner there at the campground. My son can cook a steak. I'm just telling you, my son Bohannon can cook a steak. So Friday morning, we went to the reenactment. Actually, Friday morning is Friday noon is when the reenactment took place. And there's a reason for that, is that's about when Custer attacked the Greasy Grass, the Valley of the Greasy Grass, and hit the encampment, crossing the Little Bighorn River at the Medicine Tail Coulee, crossed over and was immediately right in the middle of the camp. And the Indians there, they knew he was coming, but he knew he was coming, but both of them were shocked and surprised that he came right into the camp like that, just bolted dead in. And the Indians said, because they had already heard about the massacre at the Rosebud, and they had heard about a massacre that they had had down south as well, where Custer had ridden into the camp, in the Indian encampment, and they just shot everybody, babies, children, women, grandpas and grandmas, and just killed everybody in there. And so, the Indians had a legitimate concern. And so when they rode into camp like that, every warrior available, and even some kids, some young men, immediately jumped up, and they had to fight they thought they were fighting for the lives of their mothers and their babies and their aunts and their uncles and their grandpas and grandmas. And they believe, the Reelbird family that owned the property where the Medicine Tail Coulee is, and grew up right there on that property, they believe that Custer died almost immediately, was shot in the chest, fell from his horse, and either died from the wound, that wound, or was shot a second time in the head, or he might have actually committed suicide once he was wounded like that. They're not sure of those things. The Reelbird family, just incredibly talented people. I'm not sure how many there were of the family. I know there's a Richard Reelbird, a Jim Reelbird, Henry Reelbird, and Kennard Reelbird. And Henry was the main announcer. Some of the others also took turns announcing through the reenactment, but Henry did most of it, and he's about as funny as he can be. He's actually a noted poet in Montana, and well known for his poetry, and is considered a poet laureate. And then his brother Kennard is an artist with multiple fields of artistry. I did see some of the jewelry that he had made over the years, and they're both probably in their mid to late 70s, I'm guessing. And so they're telling stories that their parents heard from their grandparents, and to be able to tell the story of the Little Bighorn. They said they grew up swimming in the Medicine Tail Coulee and swimming along that stretch of the Little Bighorn, and they would see these people come with metal detectors and so forth and look over their property, and it wasn't until they were a little bit later that they realized the significance of the land that their family owned. And after Henry was a bronc rider until later on got injured, and of course the poetry and so forth. But at some point the family realized the significance of their property, and they began putting together this reenactment every year on the anniversary, about the anniversary of Little Bighorn. And so after then, we went at right after the Little Bighorn, the reenactment. We went to the hill where the Last Stand monument and the graves up there are the markers where the soldiers fell. They're all of the soldiers that fell. They were buried immediately on the ground they fell, and then sometime later in shallow graves. Sometime later they were exhumed, and they were all put in a mass burial that's underneath the monument that is there now. But right across the road from the monument area is a trading post and restaurant, and we noticed right away. We went in there after we had seen the Last Stand battlefield. We went into the trading post. I noticed right away a lot of the main players in the reenactment were there. One of the events that took place at the reenactment was the singing of the national anthem, and it was done by a Frenchman, and in French garb, like he's one of the trappers. They tell the story from Lewis and Clark all the way up to Little Bighorn is how they do this thing. And so there's a point where there's trappers coming in, and their encroachment and how their involvement in the area, and so they're there. I got to figure out what's going on. Oh, the temperature got too hot. Okay, iPad needs to cool down. So I'm going to need to let my iPad cool down before I can use it to keep this up. And I hope my phone doesn't overheat like that too, because it's kind of sitting in the sun. Anyway, so he sang the national anthem, but he sang it in a different version that I'd ever heard before. Maybe an old-fashioned version, not quite as polished as the one today. So we went over that restaurant area and the trading post. We saw them there. The next night we went to dinner there. And the guy who served us, I noticed him. He was at the reenactment too, not as an actor, but he was in the stands, and so he's there serving us. And so I said, "Well, what's your relationship?" He was blonde hair, curly blonde hair, and all that, wearing a silver belted cowboy hat, but more like a Haas style is how it was shaped. And so I got to talking to him, asking. He's actually related to one of the chiefs that fought in the battle. And his family owns that trading post. His uncles own that trading post and restaurant. And his dad, during the war, moved. Met a woman in Germany in World War II, and they moved together. They moved to New York and New York City. And so he lived all of his life in New York City, except every summer they would come home to Montana and to Little Bighorn to help out in the reenactment and help out at the restaurant, because that time of year, June, they're really busy there, and to do something that's called the hand games, playing the hand games. And so he still does that and just comes home and does those things. And I didn't know what hand games were, and I saw the place where it was set up to do this, the hand games. And so I asked him about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's really great. You ought to come and see them." And I'm trying to get in the shade just a little bit more. And so, yeah, it's great. You ought to come and see him and things like that. And he's going to be tonight right after I get off work. In fact, here's what he says: "You come to the hand games and you be my guest, and you can be with me, and I'll also introduce you to my family, and who are all related to those folks that were involved in the Indian side of Little Bighorn. You can meet my family and all that kind of stuff." We did not go. It was Saturday night. He was kind of making it sound like this thing could go on for hours and hours and hours, up until midnight or 2 o'clock. And Sunday morning we're going to go to church and leave. We're heading out that next morning, so we chose not to go to the hand games and see what was going on there. But that's quite an interesting story there with all of that. Sunday morning, we went to Faith Independent Baptist Church in Hardin, again 14 miles away, and I'd seen that the church was there. It's right on the main street across the road. From it's Life Flight here where we live in Republic. We have a hospital, but it's not, it's a small town hospital. So we all have Life Flight insurance, so that if something happens to us dangerous, we can get on that helicopter and get to Spokane in a hurry to get taken care of. Anyway, so the pastor there, I had seen the church. It's right across the road from the grocery store on the main street in town in Hardin. And actually, when we got there, we found out that they're built beautiful building. Absolutely beautiful, really well maintained, set up inside and outside, really well maintained. It's actually the original city jail that they were able to purchase and turn into their church facilities. And so he was showing us around in there. But the pastor, been there 30 years, and he had just the week before experienced a tragedy in his family. Their home was hit by a tornado, and he lost the roof and the top story of his house. They're staying in the house, it's staying in the basement right now, but the house is destroyed. And yet he preached a wonderful message on God does all things well. And he used the story of his family. He said, you know, whatever's going on, God does all things well. Even with what's going on in my house, in my family, God does all things well. And there's a good purpose for what's going on and so forth. And I think we were an encouragement to the church. It was not a large church, but not small either. They had a comfortable sized group in their building. And one of the ladies said to my daughter-in-law, said, why don't you guys move here and you can be my friend? And they were just very friendly folks. Pastor told me if I had any problems and it was within driving range, please call him, and gave me his phone number and email, and get a hold of me and I'll come and rescue if I need to do that. Sunday afternoon, we take off from church right after services in Hardin. We take off, and that stretch from Hardin to Bozeman. We wanted to get to Bozeman for church that evening. I was going to go to church in Whitehall, which is about an hour east of Bozeman, but the pastor had some things going on. They were not having Sunday night services, and he had a visitor already, so he was not going to be able to spend any time with me, and in fact discouraged me from coming because of his own obligations at the time. And so instead we stopped at Bozeman, went to church in Bozeman, and then after services drove that next hour to get to Cardwell, where we had arranged for a campground stay there. And services in Bozeman, it was Faith Baptist Church, and there's a pastor that's been there for 32 years, and they still meet in a storefront building. Well done, well decorated, good group inside the service in the church for Sunday night services. He preached out of the book of James, What is Your Life? It's a great message and a great time there. I gave him my business card, my ambassador of encouragement card, and just told him, I'm praying for you. Just let him know I'm praying for him for the rest of my life, that I'll be able to remember things anyway. And then we drove to that Cardwell RV. It's a general store and RV. Nice place, not as nice as Seventh Ranch was, but it was a good place for us to stay the night. I'm going to tell you, the people that worked there were friendly, and I'm just going to say this. Everyone we met in Montana, from those who were in church to those who were working in the stores and the gas stations, and to the Seventh Ranch, those people, they were the nicest people. And even the Real Bird family and the folks at that restaurant, the nicest people you'd ever meet. That was an incredibly pleasant experience that way. So we went to the services that evening. Next morning, and then drove to Cardwell. Next morning, we left Cardwell at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to make it home. I have 463 miles to home and going over those passes, and I want to take some time. I know I got to stop for gas every 150 miles or so. So I'm thinking I'm not going to make it home. But we actually, it went so very well. The drive went so very well that we actually made it home by 6 o'clock that evening. Zero trouble, 463 miles for that last leg, and zero trouble anywhere. The one thing that did happen is sticker shock when I drove back into Washington and saw the gas prices. They'd gone up since gas has gone up 6 cents a gallon because of a tax that our governor has instituted. Gas has gone up 6 cents a gallon. It's over the week that we were gone, and I understand it's going up another 6 cents a gallon next month. And our state is, there's some weird things going on with our government. I'll tell you what, Ferguson, who's a liberal Democrat anyway, he got when he was running for campaign, he said, no, we're not raising taxes. Washingtonians can't afford to have their taxes raised, but it didn't take him 3 or 4 months to give us, a $7 million tax increase. Anyway, enough politics on there, I guess. I'll get off of those things. But I just want to tell you, we had an incredible time. I do believe we were able to encourage those churches. Now, how I kind of want to do this ambassador encouragement thing, I know this is going to happen. I do have a group of churches that church planters that I am already familiar with, aware of. They're friends of mine. And I want to be an encouragement to them. I want to just come unannounced and come to their services. I want to sing loud and shout amen when they're preaching. And in fact, the pastor in Hardin asked me, he says, Ambassador of Encouragement, how are you going to encourage? And I said, well, I intend to sit in the services, sing loud, and say amen. And he said, wow, that really would be an encouragement. And so I just want to do that. And but I'm figuring like this is going to happen, that I'm going to drop in unannounced, and we're going to go to a service. We're going to, at no cost. I expect no. We're working hard to raise the money. My wife and I have the income in retirement income to be able to live well enough, but to travel and to do what I want will cost a little bit. So I am trying to raise support. I do have my home sending church here in Liberty Baptist Church is giving us support. I try to raise money by selling my books, and right this year so far, I'm averaging about $100 a month in book sales. I do have one subscriber to my podcast, paid subscriber to my podcast channel. Very, very thankful for that. I'd love to have some more of those. I don't push for any of this though. If God gives it to me, God gives it to me. If he doesn't, he doesn't. That's his business. But I'm not going to be a salesman. I'm not going to spend my time trying to, travel around trying to raise money. But I want to go to these churches. I'm going to show up unannounced. I'm going to show up without expectations. Prayerfully, I'll be in a position where I'll be able to maybe take them out to eat. And maybe give some gifts to their children if we know that they have young children, some things to encourage their kids and sing loud and amen their messages. And if for whatever reason we sense that they need us to, there's a connection, well, because I have the RPod, we can stay longer if necessary. And if it would be helpful, we can stay longer. That's the idea. And if for whatever reason it's not necessary, then we can move on. And kind of this was an experimental trip for us. I felt like the first church we went to in Missoula, they were more of an encouragement to us than we were to them. They were doing well, and I mean, I certainly did not expect them to fill my gas tank. I certainly did not expect them to give me a love offering. I wouldn't feel comfortable going back now because I'm afraid they would feel like they needed to do that every time. And so that would be an issue for me. I did, appreciate the fact that they gave me a place to park my trailer. My RPod is set up in such a way, in fact, I have solar panels too. So my RPod is set up in such a way that I wouldn't even need electricity. I would need some water, some fresh water, but I wouldn't even need electricity in most places. And so I could come and stay for, a week or two. I wouldn't want to stay more than 2 weeks anyway, because I like to be loyal to and faithful at my own sending church here in Republic. And if, it clicks and there's something that I can do that I can be a help, but I can stay a little bit longer. If not, well, there are plenty of churches that I can go and do the very same thing with. So that's the plan. Right now, I don't know if it's going to work out, but right now, what we're praying about and planning right now is that in August, after my grandson's wedding, that I'll meet up with my oldest son again. If the Lord allows this, I'll meet up with my oldest son again, and we together will make another trip. This time, the wedding is going to be in northern Washington on I-5. This time, we're going to go down I-5 into Oregon, and there are a number of churches down there that I'd like to drop in on and visit. So in August, second to third week of August-ish is what we're thinking about, a 2-week trip there. We'll see if that plays out right, but that's what we're planning right now. All right, so I did notice that there are a number of people that have signed on, and so I see some amens and saying hello and all of that. I just want to thank you for checking in today. And if you have any comments, once I sign off, I think that the comment section works there. If you got comments about my trip and how we did, if you got questions, let me know those as well. John Basecamp, I see you there, and I recognize you as kind of a regular commenter to my program and my channel. I thank you for that. And so God bless you and keep you, and lift up his countenance upon you and be gracious unto you and give you peace. Bye-bye.